Okay, good morning. Welcome to the Thurston County Board of County Commissioners Agenda Setting Work Session for this Tuesday, November 2nd, 2021. It's 9:06 a.m. My name is Ty Menser, Chair of the Board. In the boardroom is the Vice Chair, Commissioner Gary Edwards, Commissioner Carolina Mejia, present on the Zoom platform, Assistant County Manager and Acting County Manager for this next couple of weeks, Robin Campbell, is here. And Amy Davis, Clerk of the Board, is just off screen as well. So we're picking right up. We have quite a few things to go through this morning. We're scheduled from 9 to 12, and we're probably taking a break around 10:25-ish, but stay on the same Zoom platform. We're picking up first with COVID-19 update, item 1 on this morning's agenda. I see Dr. Abdulmalik, our County Health Officer. Go right to you, Dr. A.
Good morning, Commissioners. Today is day 636 of our COVID-19 pandemic response. To date, in Washington State, there have been 730,108 COVID-19 cases and 8,659 COVID-19 related deaths. In Thurston County to date, there have been 20,641 COVID-19 cases, 235 deaths, as well as 1,329 hospitalizations, and that just includes Thurston County residents. At this point, we have had 97 outbreaks recorded in congregate care settings, and we're currently working on 13 active outbreaks as of October 31st. Our 14-day community transmission rate has bumped upwards. We're currently at 426.8 cases per 100,000 over the past 14 days. So in terms of our ICU capacity, 100% of our airborne isolation ICU rooms are occupied. And 88.2% of our non-airborne infection isolation rooms are currently occupied in terms of our ICU beds. This changes to 87.5% of our airborne isolation acute beds and 96.1% of our non-airborne isolation acute beds are covered for an overall our surge capacity, we're at about 81% overall in terms of our flex rooms. We currently have 32 ventilated patients with COVID-19. We do continue to provide vaccination, which is one of the key ways to prevent severe illness and death from this virus. To date, 370,138 doses of vaccine have been given in Thurston County, and 181,937 residents of Thurston County have initiated vaccination, with 168,445 Thurston County residents being fully vaccinated at this time, so meaning completing a series of vaccine. This includes 1,389 doses of COVID-19 vaccine administered by Thurston County Public Health at our mall clinic over the past week. We continue to watch trends closely. We have seen the AY.4.2 variant in Washington State, which is the Delta, which is what is colloquially called the Delta Plus variant. And we are watching closely what that does to our numbers. Overall, 99.8% of all new cases in Thurston County in Washington State, sorry, that's not county level data, that's state level data, are the Delta variant at this time. We don't have specific numbers on the AY.4.2 variant numbers at this point. We're watching cautiously as we've seen our case counts slowly uptick. So today is a good time just to remind everyone, especially as we're going into winter, that masking and distancing and staying home when sick and getting tested are absolutely critical to bringing our case rates down. And with that, I'm open to any questions you may have.
Commissioner Mejia, any questions for Dr. Abdul-Malik?
No questions at this time. Thank you.
Commissioner Edwards?
Yes, Doctor, I see that we've had 20,000 folks that have had the virus and recovered, and some jurisdictions are looking to that number as part of those that are classified as immune due to the natural immunity. Are we getting any closer to doing something like that?
So when we think about who has protection from future infection, we do account for folks who have antibody protection as a result of being infected. In terms of how protective previous infection is we're seeing data that is variable because differing people mount different responses to the virus itself, and we're still learning how long that antibody protection might last. We continue to follow the CDC guidance that within 90 days reinfection is highly unlikely, and we do, for folks that are within that 90-day window who do not have symptoms, we continue to ask them to monitor for symptoms if they've had an exposure with somebody that has had COVID-19, but we don't require quarantine unless they become symptomatic. But yes, we do account or we do consider the number of folks who've had an infection when we think about what the overall immunity is in our county and our state.
How about, do you have a comparison between those breakthrough cases, I guess you refer to them as when somebody's been vaccinated and then they come down with the virus, compared to an individual that has recovered from the virus and then also comes down, so for a second time? So do you have any facts or figures that go along with that to see which gives you the better protection?
So what we do know is that we know that people who have previously gotten the SARS-CoV-2 virus, if they don't get vaccinated, they are more than twice as likely to get COVID-19 again as those who had a natural infection and then became vaccinated after being infected. So we are seeing that COVID-19 vaccinations are protective and offer additional protection over natural infection. But it's a complicated issue, and we are definitely still getting more data. What we do know, so the data that we do have is that when we have apples to apples comparisons in terms of, so meaning that the groups that where we're looking at groups with similar risk factors who are, in terms of who may be at risk for reinfection because they've had, who have had prior infection, what we are seeing is that there is additional protection offered by the vaccine over getting infected by the virus alone. But yes,
okay,
thank you.
You've covered a lot of numbers, and I'm just wondering, do you have similar numbers that you could give the public? So say out of 1,000, So out of 1,000 people, those that were vaccinated, how many get a infection, I guess the breakthrough infection? And maybe out of 1,000 people that have recovered from this virus, how many of those come down again, so that they can have something that really is a definite number that they can refer to that makes sense to them?
Yeah, at this point, to be honest, so our colleagues at the state and federal levels are working on getting those specific numbers. I have definitely asked for those numbers, and I anticipate that where possible, we should be getting those numbers soon as as our colleagues break out the data a little bit more.
Okay, then you can pass those on at a later time then?
That is my hope, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Dr. A. I guess I would make the comment that looking at if the public's following along in our materials, on page 3 of the COVID-19, which is the first document after the agenda, is a kind of a monthly summary. And I think early on in the pandemic, it was kind of good to see things by the week, but this has gone on so long that I find this monthly summary now to be a much more sort of concise way to sort of see the trajectory of the pandemic through the last year and a half. And we can see the spike that we had in August really clearly. The numbers are there in the table showing that we went the previous high of 1645 cases from December 2020. We were down to 849 in July, and then we went to 3,057 in August, up to 3,087 in September, and then now for October we have 2,623, which is down a little bit, but it's still like 40% higher than any previous time during the entirety of the pandemic. So I just encourage people to take a look at this, kind of get a sense of it, because as we go through time and fatigue with all of the precautions and stuff sets in, it's sort of, you kind of lose perspective on schools are back going and stadiums are full and all of that, but it's good to keep a perspective on where we're at. So anything else, Dr. A, before we go? Cut you loose?
No, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to item 2 this morning, which is homeless strategies update, and I see Keely Marino. Good morning, Keely.
Good morning, commissioners. Keely Marino with Public Health and Social Services. I'm going to start off as I typically do with the rental assistance report. This week, Community Action Council has served nearly 3,000 households, 2,862 households, and have paid out over $20 million in rental assistance and about $967,000 in utility assistance. Again, 58% of those households that they're serving are at 30% area median income and below, and nearly half are households with children under 18. Community Youth Services still going strong, serving those 18 to 24-year-old households. They've served 108 of those households entirely, with 198 other households in process, and they've spent $852,000 on rental assistance for those young people in our county. We are still seeking applications for our diversity, equity, and inclusion consultant for just the homeless crisis response system. That application process ends on the 12th of November, and we're looking forward to a robust review and selection of that individual or agency. And then just in more dates to put on people's calendars, this Thursday, of course, is our public information hearing or meeting, which will be virtual to discuss and to answer questions by panel of the proposed temporary safe parking project that would be moving 13 to 18 vehicles from Ensign Road proposed onto Martin Way and Carpenter Road. So that will be an opportunity for those pre-submitted questions. We've received quite a number of emails with questions and comments, and we are compiling those, and we will be answering those that night and also monitoring the chat for any follow-up questions if we have time. So the Regional Housing Council website through Thurston County Board of County Commissioners, Regional Housing Council has the link for the public to sign up if they'd like to attend. And then I don't know if you saw something I'm monitoring. There's a couple things I'm monitoring. One is there was an article in the paper. I would have mentioned it last week, but we did not have an agenda setting that I was not at the agenda setting, where there were 3 portable toilets that had apparently been tampered with and had exploded. Somebody placed, we don't know what in them, along Wheeler Road, and through the night, that Saturday night, they were exploded. Pretty scary. So we're just keeping an eye on activities. There are other activities that have been mentioned anecdotally from outreach workers that serve on our scattered site pilot program. There are reports of vehicles driving by, tossing fireworks or explosives at the camp over the last several months. Just growing concerns about safety for people living out there, but also our contracted outreach agencies that are doing the work that our office is contracting them to do. So just really concerning. Appreciated that there was a little bit of attention paid to it with the Olympian. So I'm grateful for that. And I believe that's it. I think there was one other thing. Oh, and I have been receiving, I did have sent out, not myself personally, but the outreach community has been alerted to any new camps cropping up in the county. They're immediately alerted through a listserv we have, and they have been going out and attempting to engage with those individuals in these newer encampments to just see who's out there and what's going on. So just staying on top of that, and our outreach agencies are really responsive. So really grateful for them to be looking after those reported campsites that are new to us. And that is all for me today.
Commissioner Mejia, any questions for Keely?
No, thank you, sir.
Commissioner Edwards?
Yes, sir. Keely, will the public at some point have an opportunity to voice their concerns about this in some type of a public hearing?
Yes, that our public information meeting is set up for that. That is on this Thursday from 6 to 7. And all of the emails and comments that have come in are being compiled and kept and will be addressed in that public information meeting.
So they are going to be able to have public comment at this meeting on Thursday?
No, sir. They will be able to comment via the chat, and they will be able to pre-submit their comments and their concerns, of which all of them are being viewed and compiled. And many of the concerns are very similar. So we are ensuring that we're answering as many questions as we possibly can, as the concerns have been pretty consistent.
But there still will not be a public hearing where they'll be able to voice their concerns. They can only do it through written comment. Is that correct?
I do believe they could attend the Regional Housing Council and make public comment, or perhaps the Board of County Commissioners and make public comment. But our public information meeting is set up to address their concerns as they are written and pre-submitted. So
Okay.
that is the plan.
And you said you're getting quite a few questions. So are you compiling that list of questions and then a list of answers that correspond to those questions for the board, so we've got some idea of the public input?
That can be done, yes.
Okay, thank you.
That makes sense. Thank you, Keely. Okay. Let's go on to item 3 this morning, which is to review the draft agenda for this afternoon's board meeting. Call the meeting to order at 2 p.m. We'll have Pledge of Allegiance to be led by Vice Chair Edwards, approval of agenda and board meeting minutes, opportunity for the public to address the board, county manager's update. Robin, anything you'd like to alert us to at this juncture?
No update this afternoon per se, but we do expect to have significant amount of testimony on the RV parking site.
Okay, great. Sounds good. Let's look at the consent agenda. There's 3A through 3I. So many items. 3A is Human Resources, Civil Service, Resolution for Revised Classification Specifications.
So good morning, Commissioners. Robin Campbell, Assistant County Manager. And this item is one that you discussed last week and during your budget deliberations. This is for 3 of the 5 classifications that were part of a classification study for the Sheriff's Office and Corrections to receive salary adjustments. 3 of the classifications will receive salary adjustments. And the 2 classifications that are not receiving salary adjustments at this time are still under consideration by the board. But this action goes ahead with the 3 that the board has approved as part of the budget.
Is this just, is this both pieces? It's both the classification update and the salary, corresponding salary adjustment?
So this is that is a very good question for HR, and we have Debbie Brookman on the screen.
It's what it says in the action, but I just want to clarify because we're doing classes for all 5 and then salary adjustments for 3 of the 5. But I want to make sure that this is what I understand this particular action to be. Go ahead, Debbie.
Right.
Good morning, Commissioners. Debbie Brookman, Human Resources. The action is to approve classification updates for all 5 of the classifications and wage adjustments for 3 of the classifications.
Perfect. Thank you. Commissioner Mejia?
No, I see on later in the agenda, we're going to be discussing this, so I'll save my comments for that time.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, it's under Thurston public hearing decisions pending.
Okay, then I guess we better stop. If we're going to do that, we better hold this item then.
Yeah.
I believe that at the budget conversation, an agreement was made when the board approved these salary adjustments, that these ones would be adopted at this time and there would be continuing conversation on the other 2.
Okay. Okay. So this, all right. Yeah, I do recall that. So Commissioner Mejia, are you comfortable with item 3A with depending, and again, there'll be further discussion, sounds like on the 2 other classifications, how they're handled in terms of salary?
So far, yes.
Commissioner Edwards?
No, I am still concerned about those 2 that we're not addressing. And being we're going to have this discussion later on this morning's meeting, I would ask that this be decided on as if it's going to move forward onto the agenda for 2 o'clock until after we have the discussion this morning. Is that okay with my seatmates?
That's fine.
Okay. So we can come back to that at a later date. We'll decide if that's going to be agenda or
Later this morning.
yeah, later this morning, we'll make that determination.
Yeah, because it might need to get pulled.
There, that's what I'm wondering about. So that's my concern, sir.
That's fine. Well, we've got 3A to come back to then.
Okay,
thank you. 3B is Public Health and Social Services, Veteran Assistance Program Pilot Initiative.
Yes, we also, the board discussed this last week as well. This is a pilot program where we would be purchasing 1 home or supporting 1 veteran per quarter in the pilot to establish the program and get it up and running before we expand it.
Commissioner Mejia?
No, sir, no questions in regards to this.
Commissioner Edwards?
Yes, sir. On purchasing, I think that was a misstatement. possibly about
They have
purchasing a
been,
home?
and I'm gonna just look it up to make sure I know what I'm talking about. This is the Veterans Assistance Pilot.
Mark
And
Moffett
we
is
have
here.
Mark Moffett on the screen, and this will be identifying one veteran each quarter who is underemployed or unemployed and at risk of losing their home. So the veteran chosen for assistance will receive help with rent, utilities, and childcare if needed for up to 3 months with additional assistance in searching for employment and other types of support. And I would invite Mark to fill in any gaps that I may have missed.
So my recollection is this is the program where there was a debate amongst the other commissioners about whether one,
Listen on.
whether there was, we're going to pilot with one individual and there was a concern about whether that was not enough to launch this program. Am I remembering the right program?
Yes.
Mark? Okay.
Yes.
Mark, do we have questions for Mark? I remember this pretty clearly and I'm supportive. Anybody need to ask Mark a question?
I do have questions, sir.
Okay, go ahead.
We received some pretty extensive comment this morning from a local veteran. And I just wonder if we shouldn't maybe remove this from the consent item so that we can still have more discussion after we hear from, I believe that veteran is coming to testify today. And maybe we'll have time to review his concerns that he sent in by email. So I would ask that this be removed from the consent item, placed on a regular agenda item for this afternoon's meeting, so we can have a better understanding as we move forward.
Okay, you have an absolute right to have any item removed from consent. So let's have that done. Anything else, Commissioner Mejia?
No, sir.
Okay,
So could I please get a copy of the information that you're referencing?
Yep.
Do you have that?
Uh,
We'll get a copy. Thank you.
This is it. This morning, and I haven't really digested it. And I know he's
All right.
coming in to testify. So there you go. Thank you, sir.
yep, excellent, thank you. Then let's go to 3C. Sheriff's Office item, interlocal agreement for inmate housing.
This item is an increase in our contract with Lewis County, where we house inmates when we have overflow from our jail. We've not had anyone in off-site inmate housing for quite some time. However, we have this contract in place should the need come up.
Questions from the board? Under Sheriff's here, I think if we needed.
No, sir.
Commissioner Edwards?
No, I have no questions on this, sir.
Yep, me neither. Let's go on to item 3D. 3D and 3E are both treasurer items regarding tax title properties, and our county treasurer, Jeff Gavin, is here. I'll let Robin, I guess, kind of just take us through it.
I would just say that you saw the maps last week of this property and raised no questions at that time, but we'd be happy to answer questions this morning if you have them.
Commissioners?
I don't have any questions. I'd like to commend our treasurer for getting this stuff back on the tax rolls.
Commissioner Mejia?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Good to go on 3D and 3E. 3F is an appointment to the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee, and it's Annette Pitts from our Visitor Convention Bureau.
Yes, this appointment will meet the requirements of this committee to have members who represent those entities that are eligible to receive the funding. And Ms. Pitts is the manager of our Visitor and Convention Bureau in Thurston County. So she'll be a wonderful representative.
Questions or concerns on this appointment from the board?
No, sir.
No, sir.
All right. Then we have Auditor Financial Services. We have two of them since we have, or actually three of them. Let's see.
Yes, we have the first one, item G, is a supplemental from one day in August that was discovered that needs board approval. The item H is for the week of October 11th. This is when we had canceled our board meeting last week. This catches us up. And then the regular one is item I.
Questions from the board? Commissioner Mejia?
No, sir.
Commissioner Edwards?
No, sir.
Okay. And that wraps up consent agenda, which will be amended to remove at least one item, and we'll come back to 3A. Department items, 4A is Central Services, and it's bid award for Building 4 Resource Room, Project 25615.
Thank you, Commissioner. This item is, as it says, Building 4 Resource Room. This will be a place where services can be provided to people who are released from our corrections facility and need assistance. The bids have been received and the winning bidder has been identified, and we are requesting that the board authorize the contract with Adroit Contractors Incorporated of Olympia to perform the work and prepare the space.
Chris Helmer's here if we need him. How about Commissioner Mejia?
No, sir.
Commissioner Edwards?
Mike, how many bids did we have on this?
You're muted, Chris.
We had 7 bids on this.
Okay. Thank you, Chris.
You're very welcome.
Okay, very good.
One thing I would add, if I
yeah.
could please,
Yes,
is
sir.
we are starting the process of submittal approval and ordering materials. And we may very well run into some supply chain issues that may adversely impact schedule. We anticipate January of 22 for completion. It may run past that because of this supply chain issues that we are anticipating. So we'll keep everyone updated. Excuse me.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I was curious about the schedule, so I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Emergency Services is next, 5A, contract for, I guess that's federal fiscal year 21 Homeland Security Grant, number E22-100. Kurt Harden, Emergency Services Director.
Yes, this is funding that the county is eligible to receive that supports our emergency services, and Kurt can tell you more about specifically what the grant will entail.
Yeah. Good morning, Commissioners. Kurt Harden, Director of Emergency Services. I'm requesting the board to approve the Homeland Security Grant, and it's in the amount of $350,545, and the performance period is September 1st, 2021 to October 31st of 2023. This is an annual federal grant that's passed through state emergency management to provide funding for the Homeland Security Region 3. Thurston County is the lead administrative agency for Homeland Security Region 3, which also includes the tribes and jurisdictions in Grace Harbor, Lewis, Mason, Pacific, and Thurston counties. This funding reimburses eligible expenses for equipment, exercises, training, and planning activities in the Homeland Security Region 3. The revenues associated with this contract were anticipated and are included in the department's 2021 budget and the 2022 proposed budget. And this funding is 100% federal funds and no county general funding is needed.
Questions for Kurt? Commissioner Mejia?
No, sir.
Commissioner Edwards?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you, Kurt.
Thank you.
All right. Item 6 is Public Health and Social Services. 6A is Memorandum of Understanding with City of Olympia for Ensign Road.
So this item is for authority for the county manager to enter into an agreement, memorandum of understanding with the City of Olympia. This is the underlying agreement to move individuals currently living in RVs off Ensign Road to the site at Carpenter and Martin Way. The hearing on this, the public information session will be held this Thursday on the RV parking site. But this memorandum is the foundational piece between the county and the city on how the site will be managed.
Tom, do you want to add anything before I go to the board?
Yeah, that was a good summary by Robin. I would just add, this is a memo. This MOU has two components to it. The first is the operation of Martin Way and Carpenter Road, but also for the second phase for the acquisition of a piece of property in Olympia for a long-term temporary solution. So it includes both components of the long-term approach, the short term of moving vehicles to Martin Way and Carpenter Road, along with the long-term acquisition of a property in Olympia. The MOU also calls for Olympia to enforce its parking restrictions along Ensign Road so that the vehicles do not return to Ensign Road once they're moved.
Can you define long-term and short-term? Or is it defined in the MOU?
Yeah, so short-term for Martin Way is we're estimating 6 months before I move, and temporary long-term for the other property is up to 3 years. So the idea would be to move vehicles onto the Franz Anderson property for a period of up to 3 years, with hope that eventually that would be turned into permanent housing. But it's so kind of long-term temporary is, I know, a little bit of an oxymoron, but looking at that 3-year kind of time frame for the longer term solution.
Okay, Commissioner Mejia?
Yes, Tom, how's the Franz Arden, how are we doing on that long-term property? Has there been any shift in that? Are we closer to purchasing it? What's the?
According to the MOU, the City of Olympia is taking the lead on the acquisition of that property. Keith Staley has been taking that lead. He's been out for the last couple of weeks. He's now back in the office. So City of Olympia is moving forward with that. We really wanted to have this MOU in place in order to take the next steps along that acquisition. So having this MOU will allow Olympia to move forward with next steps toward acquiring that property.
Anything else, Commissioner?
How long does it usually take to acquire a property? What's the process like?
Yeah, it can take a little bit of time, but we do believe that the 6-month time frame to complete the acquisition and then do some site prep to prepare the property to accept vehicles is doable. It does mean we need to move forward with urgency, but it is a doable time frame.
Commissioner, Commissioner Mejia, are you good?
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Edwards?
Yes, sir. My concern is that if we vote for this prior to accepting all the public comment and concerns, we're actually disenfranchising our citizens. And because I don't want to do that, I want to make sure they have a voice in this process to some degree. I'm going to ask that this be removed from today's agenda until after we can hear public comment. That's going to be at 2 o'clock this afternoon. And then on Thursday, there is the ability for people to receive answers possibly to their questions. So I just think this is a little premature. We're making a decision here that disregards the public input. And if we were to vote for this at this point in time, So I really don't see that there's a big issue here that we couldn't delay this until a future date, until the public has a little more ability to make comments. There's a lot of concerns. I'm told that today at 2, we're going to be presented with a petition possibly with over 400 signatures on it that are very concerned about the way this thing is moving forward from local residents here in the Tanglewild area. So I don't know all that, and that's why I'm asking that it be delayed, because we don't know everything that's coming forward on this. And it'll look like we're jumping the gun, so to speak, on the public's input or disregarding it.
Tom, the two-phase plan that's been outlined in the MOU, how many other like alternative scenarios for solving the problem? I mean, this is all, just as a starting point, this is designed to address Ensign Road near the emergency hospital, clearing the area for emergency vehicles. Is that correct?
Correct.
And how many other alternative plans were on the table out of which this one was selected in order to solve that problem?
We considered other sites, and so we looked at the Mottman properties out by the Juvenile Justice Center and the jail. So there were other, I know the county manager also had conversations with Providence and explored other options. I don't know how far each of them kind of got various degrees of consideration. And I looked at Keely Marino, who's also on the call, who was also involved in those discussions. But there was consideration of other properties that the county owns, and the Martin Way Carpenter Road site was determined to be the most feasible, the most ready, requiring the least amount of prep work, environmental impact to move forward with.
I mean, let me clarify my question. Was there any other alternative that kind of reached the level of viability? I'm not saying you didn't consider any other plan, but did any other site or proposed approach for clearing Ensign Road reach a viability level, and this one was selected over that one, so to speak?
No, I do not believe any other site reached a level of viability that was considered to the extent that the Martin Wayne Carpenter Road site was. Keely, would you have anything? Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Okay, go ahead. Keely, anything else to add there?
Just really quickly, I just want to add that a year ago, we were in exactly the same position when the city of Olympia was attempting to move some of the vehicles off Ensign Road. They got a stay saying that it was against an eviction moratorium. There was a plea for the county to help the city of Olympia with this prospect, and that is when the county agreed, yes, we will help city of Olympia. And we started talking about Martin Way and Carpenter Road, but using the city of Olympia's 2 adjacent properties to ours. So this is definitely not the first time that we've had this conversation. And also it was just a year ago that the county said, yes, we will help you, city of Olympia, with this problem.
The other aspect of this, and it kind of connects to Commissioner Edwards' concerns, is that this particular site at Carpenter and Martin was going to become a mitigation site, a second mitigation site. And we had, if I remember correctly, we had a lot of community engagement on that and questions and concerns. And ultimately it didn't go forward because of the escalating costs. But the site was vetted, and I would imagine that the mitigation site that was planned at that time was going to be considerably more chaotic, I'll say, than 15 to 18 RVs that are being hand selected out of seniors based on the terms of the MOU. So I guess I'm pointing that out because that kind of plays into my position regarding Commissioner Edwards' concerns. This site is not anything new. It's been fully vetted by the community in a much more potentially concerning plan that was on the table a couple of years ago. That plan was going forward until costs escalated beyond what we felt was a good investment of taxpayer dollars. And now we're in a situation where we have an emergency situation with the hospital and no other viable alternative on the table. And I would say that you mentioned City of Olympia coming to us, but I was approached by the leadership at Providence St. Peter's Hospital, and it really wasn't Olympia leaders that approached me and asked me for a partnership. It was Providence, who is trying to save people's lives and respond to the needs of the community for medical emergencies. And so I think, with all due respect to my seatmate, I think there is a true time issue here. I'm frankly embarrassed that it's taken us this amount of time to get a solution for an emergency management situation moving forward. So I'm going to listen with open ears to whatever public comment is provided today, but and I may change my mind. You know, we always listen, and it's certainly the board has in the past on multiple occasions responded in one of our meetings to table something or to delay something based on public comment. But I would like to see it remain on the agenda. We take the public comment and we see where we go from there. But I want to circle back to Commissioner Mejia because Commissioner Edwards made that proposal.
You know, I sit with the RHC, and I also, I started meeting monthly with Providence Hospital and the businesses surrounding that whole area. Keely has joined me at those meetings, and I mean, to say they are frustrated and very upset at us is an understatement. And for me, the reason we have to deal with this now is we either deal with this or we're gonna be dealing with a lawsuit, because that's where those businesses are. They are at that point. And so, I mean, if Thurston County taxpayers wanna be paying for, you know, to defend a suit, that's where we're at right now. It really is a shame that, you know, sometimes we let these things come to a boiling point and then we're caught in this very tough situations. But for me, it's about our response time. It's about when the ambulance is, you know, having to divert because they can't, you know, get to the hospital immediately. And there's been so much misinformation on this, and I said this at the Regional Housing Council meeting. There's been so much misinformation in regards to just this whole movement. And that's why we're setting this information meeting session up, because the amount of things that have been put out there are honestly just not true. And that's why I'm in support of it. I've been hearing from Providence and those businesses, and I just don't think they're going to be patient with us any longer. They are there.
Okay, so it sounds like we have two votes
Chair?
to keep this on the agenda. Go ahead,
Chair?
Commissioner Edwards, do you have a response?
I'll comment to that. First of all, this is Olympia's problem. This exists in the city of Olympia. This is not a county problem. They've created this problem by allowing and encouraging deviant behavior on the part of these individuals throughout Olympia. Now it's spilling over into the county. I really believe there's a big difference between an information meeting and input that the public gets. So I think there's a big concern that there's a difference there. I really think that this is a misconception that this is going to fix the problem if we move 17 vehicles from the Ensign Road problem. That's going to leave about 50 vehicles there to be dealt with. So it does not solve the problem. It just spreads it around a bit and aggravates everybody. As far as the businesses, I am very sympathetic to those folks that are suffering this on Ensign Road. But the reality is Olympia has allowed this to happen. They've not taken any action. As far as other property that's available, at the old city hall, there's several acres down there right next to the freeway. It's paved, it's ready to go. They're using it for storage. there is no reason that they couldn't have these, all of these vehicles moved over to that location and give that property up. But no, they want to push this out into the rural part of the county any way they can. And I think it is a slap in the face to our citizens to take this action prior to having adequate input from our citizens about this issue. So that's my concern, and my vote will probably reflect that if we decide to move forward. But I'm still asking that this thing be removed from the agenda because there's just too much misinformation. It is Olympia's problem. If they get sued, we might be named in a suit because we're in the county as well. But I don't think it's a big problem in that regard. Olympia needs to be the primary on picking up the solution to what they've created here over the past 10 years. So that's my position on that, sir.
Tom, where's the property that's going to be the long-term phase 2, temporary long-term as you described it? Where is that property located?
That is off of Franz Anderson Road, off of Lily Road, is it? Near between Martin Way and Pacific.
And what's the jurisdiction of that property?
It is Olympia.
Okay, so City of Olympia is not trying to push this problem into the unincorporated county or any other jurisdiction. It doesn't sound like to me by entering into this MOU with the county. There were also a lot of, if I remember correctly, there was a pileup of RVs in the Lacey City Hall parking lot. And Lacey had a town hall meeting, and Lacey was proposing a site out near Cabela's, and they ended up not doing that. But I do think it's a county-wide issue and it cannot be laid at any particular jurisdiction's feet. It sounds like we have 2 votes to keep this on for now. The board may decide this afternoon in light of public comment to go a different direction, but I think unless Commissioner Mejia is persuaded, I think that this will stay on the agenda at this point. So let's go to 6B, Thurston County Developmental Disabilities Community Grant Contracts.
Thank you, Commissioner. This item is for funding available for services to people with developmental disabilities. In August, Public Health and Social Services released an RFP for services and assistance. 20 proposals were received. They were scored by volunteers with knowledge in the needs of people with developmental disabilities. And these 11 contracts are recommended to the board. The contracts would run from January 1st of 2022 to December 31st of 2023. And I believe Annalise is here if you have any questions.
Commissioner Mejia, anything for Annalise?
No, sir.
Commissioner Edwards?
No, sir.
Nope, I think we went through these last time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's look at 6C, waiver of competitive solicitation and contract for Big Brothers Big Sisters of Southwest Washington. Chris Hawkins from Public Health.
Thank you. This item is for a contract for professional services with Big Brothers and Big Sisters of Southwest Washington. They would provide a mentoring program to children and youth in the Tumwater School District. The total contract would be for $15,000 and run through June of 2022. This also requests that the board waive competitive bidding under our purchasing policies. Our procurement policy would allow the board to waive the bid for these professional services.
Okay, again, we reviewed this last week. Anything from the board for Chris?
Just one quick question, maybe.
Yes, sir.
This is for $15,000 is the bid?
Yep.
And that falls in that category in which we can waive it?
You can waive it for any amount of money if it's a professional service, which this is.
And these folks have actually been helping for quite some time. They're a known quantity. Maybe that'd be Chris's answer.
Well, we know Big Brothers Big Sisters of Washington, but the question is, have they been providing this service already, Chris? Is this an extension?
Yes. Yes, back in 2019, when the Tumwater Hopes Coalition got started with our fiscal agency under this state funding from the Community Prevention and Wellness Initiative, we worked with the coalition to identify an action plan for the 2019-2020 school year. And at that time, the coalition really wanted mentoring to happen for the kids in Tumwater that are the focus of this coalition. To assist and provide support so that we prevent youth substance use. And they really wanted mentoring to happen, and Big Brothers Big Sisters was the evidence-based mentoring program that was available in our area, and the coalition was very happy to have them start offering those mentoring services in 2019. And they made adaptations due to COVID-19, and they've kept that going with the coalition, again, approving this both for the 2020 to 2021 school year and now again for this school year 21 to 22. And the board approved that 20 to 21 contract, I guess, around this time last year. So this has been going on this will be the third year.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Any other questions?
No, sir.
No, sir.
All right, sounds good. Don't go anywhere, Chris. We've got item 6D, tobacco and vaping prevention regional contracts.
So this item would enter into agreements with each of our partner counties, Cowlitz, Lewis, Mason, Pacific, and Waupayakum, to assist them in implementation of the commercial tobacco prevention program that is offered and paid for by the Washington State Department of Health. And these contracts would assist these jurisdictions so that that program could be coordinated across the 7 counties in our region.
Questions, Commissioner Mejia?
No, sir.
Commissioner Edwards?
No, sir.
Okay. Anything, Chris, we need to know?
No, you've seen this one in previous years as well. Thank you very much for your attention to this, folks. Have a good day.
Okay, Public Works is next. 7A, resolution and call for sealed bids for Pacific Avenue Safety Mid-Block Crossing Project.
So this item would authorize an RFP for the project that will increase safety on Pacific Avenue. This would, I believe, enhance sidewalks and put in mid-block crossings along Pacific Avenue. And I think that's near Union Mills Road. And we have Kevin here to fill in the blanks for us.
Good morning, commissioners, and thank you. Yeah, so we've got Pacific Avenue safety improvements between City of Lacey and Union Mills Road. There's going to be 3 intersections improved with the mid-block crossing at Lake Lois, Seahawk Street, and Ranger Drive, and then additional ADA improvements at Kinwood. We've got the construction cost is estimated to be $808,069, with $745,945 coming from 2 separate federal funds. If you guys have any questions, please let me know.
Sounds like we're doing pretty good on this one. All right, Commissioner Mejia.
No, sir.
Commissioner Edwards?
Yes, I want to congratulate Kevin for getting all that matching money, but my question is, are we due for an annexation of those properties in the immediate future?
From my understanding, that's something that may be coming up, but not in the immediate future. I can double check that and get back to you this afternoon.
and I guess my follow-up, and I don't necessarily need to have that now, but if that is the case, where we're putting out county tax dollars as the match, after a certain period of time or until a certain period of time, do we make some recovery of that? Should that get annexed into the city, because it's in the urban growth area for Lacey, and it's it's actually adjoining properties to what they have now. So do you know the answer to that?
Of course, from my understanding, it does increase the value of that annexation.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, we'll go to county manager standing items after that, and then we'll go probably directly into public hearings. We have two. They're set for, looks like 3 o'clock, and I'm guessing that they'll be starting after 3 o'clock. So if the public's waiting for those public works public hearings, I think they will probably be starting somewhere closer to 3:30 or 4. And the first one is regarding updates to water and sewer construction and material standards.
Yes, Commissioners, I don't have a lot to add to that, but we have, who do we have from Public Works who can speak?
Torin Valdez is here. Let's just check if the board has any questions on this public hearing. I'm sure there'll be kind of a overview given at the prior to the public hearing. Torin, is that correct?
Yep.
Correct.
Okay. Does anybody need any information this morning?
I don't have any questions on that, sir, on either issue.
Okay, Commissioner Mejia?
No, sir.
Okay, so that covers as well. We'll have a second one, which will be updates to the Thurston County Water and Sewer Utility Codes. We'll have the public input, and I imagine we'll take action at some further future time.
Right.
Correct.
Is there a proposed motion to adopt these today, Assistant County Manager?
No, we do not have that motion prepared for you today. No.
Okay, that's how it usually works. So
Yeah.
we'll address that in a follow-up at a later session. Thank you, Torin. Okay, well, let's get going before we take a break, let's get a head start on the item 4, which is a review of the proposed agenda for next Tuesday's meeting. Board of Health will be we're not having a Board of Health, but we will have a regular Board of County Commissioners meeting. 2 p.m. call to order. Pledge of Allegiance to be led by Commissioner Mejia, reviewing the proposed agenda as we may modify it in meeting minutes from today. 2 presentations. One is a proclamation for Veterans Day, and a second is a proclamation for National Adoption Day. That will be led by Superior Court. The Veterans Day will be led by Public Health. Anything we need to know at this juncture, or any questions from commissioners on those 2 presentations?
There's, the resolution is or the proclamation is in your packet for both of these.
I see that.
Veterans Day and National Adoption Day. And I'm not sure if we will have guests here. Amy, can you speak to that?
Good morning. We will have Public Health and staff from Fleet Services in attendance next week to jointly accept the Veterans Day proclamation.
Great. And I imagine with Superior Court, our new Superior Court Administrator, Misty Robinson, will be here.
Yes, Misty will be here along with a few of the judges who are available that afternoon.
Great. Thank you.
Anything from the board? No.
Sir.
No, sir.
Okay. Opportunity for the public to address the board and county manager's update. And I believe, Robin, you'll still be at the helm next Tuesday. Is that
I
correct?
will still be here next Tuesday, and Romero will still be on vacation next Tuesday, but I have nothing at this time.
Okay. Then we'll have a consent item agenda. It's just A and B, and it's vouchers.
Right.
2 sets.
One of these is a remnant from today. It will come off, and you will just have one voucher list to approve next week.
The 25th.
Right.
Okay. Okay. Any questions from the board before we go on to item 4?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Okay. 4A is a joint resolution with the Port of Olympia regarding redistricting.
Yes, Commissioners, this is an item you've met with the Port of Olympia Commissioners. It creates a joint resolution to move forward with planning to go from 3 to 5 commissioner districts once the population of Thurston County exceeds 300,000.
Okay, any questions from the board?
I do have a question, sir.
Go ahead.
Just for the public's knowledge, is that gonna have, is that joint resolution going to talk about maybe separate ballot issues on the same ballot of creating 5 positions for the port and then another ballot issue of 5 positions for Thurston County?
Yes, Commissioner, they would be separate ballot proposals on the ballot once an agreement is reached for how to structure the districts.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, excellent. Look forward to seeing that. Item 5A is central services item, resolution and call for sealed bids for project 25578, long-term involuntary bed expansion.
Yes, this is at the what's currently known as the Triage Center near the jail at Mottman. We contract with the Thurston Mason Behavioral Health Administrative Services Organization, the TMBHASO, for involuntary treatment services. And currently there are 10 beds. With a grant from the state of Washington, we are expanding to 16 beds. We've done the pre-design work. The county owns the building, so we are working in coordination with the BHASO, and we are ready to go to bid on the construction of the additional beds.
Okay, wow, this took a while to get to.
It takes a while yet to do the design and all the necessary work.
Commissioner Mejia.
No questions. Well, I guess I do. How many expansion, how many more beds will I have available?
6.
6 more beds?
Right, and 16 is the maximum to ensure the continuance of Medicaid.
It's some bizarre, glitch in the law that says if you go above 16, then you're not eligible for certain kinds of funding. And it's something that I think everybody acknowledges needs to be changed, but it's the constraint we're under.
Right.
So we'll have a total of 16?
There will be a total. We currently have 10. There will be 16 when we're finished.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Okay, well then 6A and 6B are the follow-ups to the public hearings from this afternoon, looks like.
Yep.
6A is resolution to update water and sewer construction and material standards.
Yes, this item would be to adopt the standards that you hear at the hearing this afternoon.
Questions from the board at this juncture?
No, sir.
No,
Nope.
sir.
I'm imagining same for 6B, which would be the follow-up to the public hearing on water and sewer utility codes proposed ordinance.
Correct. This is the ordinance that would change the codes that go with the standards that you'll be hearing at the public hearing this afternoon.
Anything on that, commissioners?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Okay. Item 7A is to set public hearings on the 2022-2023 budget.
Yes, an item that I'm a little more familiar with. So this item is to set the public hearings. We are required by state law to hold public hearings on your proposed county budget beginning on the first Monday in December. So we are also required by law to hold the hearing for specific county offices and departments at set times, which is why you see that the hearings are set for 1:30, 4 o'clock, and 6 p.m. on December 6th. Oh, and at 6:15, and on December 7th at 1:30, 2:30, 4 o'clock, and 6 p.m. To cover all the areas of Thurston County operations.
Okay, Robin, if I may, is this the one where there has to be like, there's very specific instructions about how and how many times it gets posted, and we got into that thing with the Olympian. We did everything right, but their online like receipt system or something wasn't showing the total number of publications, and we had to like call Texas and all of that stuff.
Yes, this is that hearing last year, and what we do, we are legally required once each week for 2 weeks prior to the public hearing to post notice of the hearing and the availability of the budget documents. So the documents this year will be available on November 22nd, and the hearing notice will also be posted to the Olympian, our official newspaper, on November 22nd and November 29th. And what we found is that they are indeed in the newspaper and it's posted online timely, as well as on our county website. But the Olympian, they have a list of how to look up public notices. Apparently on their website, they only list the first time an item is published, even though it is published the second time as required. So we're able to show that it was legally posted both times last time, and it will be posted correctly this time as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to remind staff of that, because if there's any step we can take to eliminate that confusion, I didn't want people to forget that was confusing and aggravating to have to wrangle with that confusion, because we hadn't done anything wrong. We just had the Olympian made it difficult for us to prove that we'd done what we had done.
Right. So last year we had copies of the notice from the Olympian, but our legal counsel advised us to get certified notice from the Olympian that we had to write off to Texas to. This year, we are just going to keep copies of the newspaper so we can show anyone who asks that it was published timely.
Okay, Commissioner Mejia, anything?
No, sir. Well,
Commissioner-
actually,
oh, yeah.
yes. Can I ask one question?
Yes, ma'am.
It's hard for me to kind of wrap my head around of like 1 month of things will only go into 2 days. Yeah, is that basically it?
Yeah. So what we do at each of these times, we have, for example, and I'm, this is not set in stone, but I think at 1:30 on December 6th, we'll look at, say, law and justice. So we have a few hours on law and justice, and we'll say, this is the amount of the prosecutor's budget, and the public will have an opportunity to step forward and ask questions or make comment about the prosecutor's budget. And the prosecutor or his representative will be there to answer questions at that time. This is a unique type of public hearing where the public can come forward, not only send us comments at any point up to the public hearing, but be at the public hearing and ask questions and be answered on the spot. So we'll look at the prosecutor's budget and the clerk's budget and then the court's budget, and it actually goes pretty quick. By the end of the second day, we will have gone through the entire county budget.
Okay.
Yeah, and I strongly, for anyone who's watching, we would love to get your feedback on the budget and please plan to attend.
Commissioner Edwards?
No questions, sir.
Okay. Robin, my recollection is it's really you answering questions and the elected officials and the directors. I don't remember the Board of County Commissioners really responding, but I don't know if we're prohibited from responding if we wanted to. I can't remember how that exactly works.
You're not prohibited, the board is not prohibited from responding, but the way the law is structured, each elected official or appointed director is required to be at the hearing to respond to questions. So the law is structured so that they set up that and are available to respond to each of their own budgets.
Okay, well, I was just, yeah, for Commissioner Mejia's benefit, who maybe hasn't sat through this, that it's not, maybe the opportunity is there, maybe somebody might ask a commissioner a specific question, but in the past, it's been really us listening to the public and then listening to the elected officials and directors respond to specific questions about what they have requested and need and are going to do with what they get. So,
yep.
Okay. Then the 7B is an analogous, item to set a public hearing on revenue sources for the biennial budget.
Yes, the item B is specifically about revenue sources. State law requires that the board hold a public hearing on all sources of revenue intended to support the county budget. You specifically need to include information about property taxes and any other increases in revenue. But this is intended to be a broad overview of all types of revenue that would support the county's budget. And that is required to be held before you adopt the property tax, before you certify the property tax levy to the assessor, which you will do on December 14th. I'm just going to look that date up to be sure. Yes, December 14th of this year, you will certify the levy.
Any questions about this? Just the action next week, just to clarify, will be just to set the public hearing, and we'll have further substantive engagement with that issue later.
Yep.
Commissioner Mejia?
No questions.
Commissioner Edwards?
No, sir.
Okay. Then let's just finish up this agenda here before we break. We'll have our standing items, move to adjourn, and then we've got 3 public hearings. One at 3 o'clock, which is regarding commissioner district boundary line adjustments. And that's just about the few precincts that are going to shift in order to even out the 3 districts. Is that correct?
Yes, Commissioner, this is in response to the 10-year census. And every 10 years, you are required to resize, if you will, each of the 3 districts so that we have as closely as possible an equal number of people in each of your districts. So this will be the public hearing on the proposed new boundary lines.
Questions there? We've seen those maps. Okay, then we have 2 hearings at 5 o'clock, both from Public Works. The first one is to increase, proposed increases to water and sewer rates. Tim Wilson, Water Resources Manager, is here and will be here presumably next week. Tim, anything to say up front? Can you kind of clarify the scope of what we're talking about here?
Yes, good morning, commissioners. The board heard about these a couple weeks ago when we submitted the AIS. These are for 3% rate increases to the water and sewer utilities to keep up with inflationary costs of operating those utilities. Significant outreach has been done to the utilities, to the communities they serve, and to the utility advisory committees as well.
Commissioners, anything for Tim?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Okay, and then the next public hearing is regarding rate increases for Long Lake Management District and Lake Lawrence Management District. I think we know what that's about. That's the citizen groups have proposing to increase fees. Commissioner Edwards or Mejia, anything there?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
That will bring to a close the November 9th meetings. We are going to take a break. We're going to pick up with item 6, proclamations and awards. It's 10:26. We'll pick up at 10:40 with those items. 43 a.m. picking up Thurston County Board of County Commissioners agenda setting work session for November 2nd, 2021. We're picking up with item 6 on the morning's agenda. It is a review of proclamations and awards. Clerk of the Board, Amy Davis.
Good morning. There are 2 proclamations included in your packet for Veterans Day on November 11th. That will be accepted by various county employees. And Adoption Day for November 18th. That will be accepted by Superior Court staff. And both are on for the November 9th agenda. That is all for proclamations.
Last 2 of the year, correct?
Yes.
Okay, any questions from the board?
When will we check for next year?
I can develop a schedule, a draft schedule.
Okay. I was
Next year.
just wondering
Sure.
if it's checked at the beginning of the year or in December before we go in.
Yeah,
Anything,
I can bring
Commissioner
that in
Edwards?
December.
No, sir.
Okay, great. Then let's look at item 7, advisory boards and commissions.
So we have received a handful of applications in the last couple of weeks. First, from George Sharp for reappointment to the Agritourism Advisory Committee. There are no vacancies on this committee and term lengths are 2 years. So he's just applying for another term. And we can circle back next week for direction on this or include on the consent agenda for November 9th.
I'm good with November 9th. I go to the agritourism advisory meetings and they're doing a good job. Right now they're rewriting the bylaws and they're going to be coming to the board. So I think George has done an exceptional job on there.
Okay, are you going to go these one by one, Amy, or are we just looking at the group? I mean, they're all new, so it sounds like the board's going to probably need at least a week to go through them.
Sure, I can just run through all of them.
Go
So
ahead.
next is an application from Kaya Ramirez for reappointment to the Fair Board as a youth member. She did send a letter addressed to the board expressing their interest in reappointment. And there are 3 youth member seats on the Fair Board. One other is filled and one other is vacant. So we can circle back next week on this as well.
Okay.
So next we have 2 for the Timberland Regional Library Board of Trustees. The first is from Carly Schiffner for the vacant Thurston County seat on the board. We have not received any other applications for this position. And the second is from Tony Gwynn, who has been appointed by the Pacific County Board of County Commissioners. So you are asked to affirm the appointment that Pacific County has made. And the last 2 are for the Veterans Advisory Board from Anthony Moy and Tang Smith, who would both be new appointments to the board. There are currently 6 sitting members on the board, and code allows for up to 9 members. So there are 3 seats available. And so we can circle back next week on these.
So with the Veterans Advisory Board, I have some comments.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
So I'm just concerned, and I've read also Mr. Ballard's comments as well, and I know this was something that Robin also brought up a while back, and she asked, it's a very specific question. So I'm just wondering because we've been reappointing a lot of these members, whether they should have a letter from their organization. Of course, we asked these 2 members to have letters now, but from those people that we've appointed, for them to also bring letters from their national recognized organization. And then, and if they can't provide one, then at that time we can reassess. But this is just something for us to consider, make sure that we're being compliant with code and with the appointment of this with this board.
So just to add a little clarity, if I may, the county code requires that the members 9 members. So it says that the Veterans Advisory Board shall be comprised entirely of veterans who are residents of Thurston County. A majority of the advisory board members must be elected officers or members of nationally recognized veteran organizations located in Thurston County as evidenced by written notice from the nationally recognized veterans organization. And it's possible that that's what we are missing at this point, is that notice from their organizations that these members are representing them. So I think that that's what Commissioner Mejia is referencing that we should be obtaining.
Thank you, Robin. I'm sorry if I wasn't
clear. That's quite all right. It's,
Thank you for coming
that's
in.
part of county code.
Yeah, I will touch base with Mark and see if we can retrieve those documents.
I mean,
No, I'm with Commissioner Mejia.
Yep, sounds right. Thank you. Okay, and that's, I had a question on
Can I just,
the,
1 second, sir,
Oh,
can I just add one more thing? So
Yeah.
he asked from Mr. Moy and Mr. Smith, can we ask them to also provide letters
Yes.
as well?
Yes.
Thank you. Sorry, go ahead, sir.
my question is regarding the applicant for the library board. And I'm wondering if that applicant is known to any of the commissioners.
It's from my district, and apparently she has a kid that goes to Centennial too, but I do not know them.
I don't.
Okay.
Yeah, so I don't know them, so.
Okay, I know we've been kind of semi-actively recruiting for that spot for a while, so it's good to see an applicant, but I just curious if that was the result of somebody's recruitment effort or if that's just somebody that submitted an application, so we can take a look next week. Okay, Amy, does that cover us for advisory boards and commissions for today?
Yes, that is all.
Let's go to PIO check-in. If there's a PIO in the house.
Good morning, Commissioners. Brian Dominique, Public Information Officer for the Board of County Commissioners. Just a couple quick updates today. In lieu of the meeting, we're expecting a large turnout today for public comment potentially. So we're going to have room 152 opened for overflow. And I will be here in the boardroom to help facilitate that. And then I've also been working with Amy Davis, our clerk of the board, on doing some outreach for our advisory boards and commissions. And as an example, last night I put up a post about the Historic Commission, and we've already had 3 people show some interest in that. So we are continually working on recruiting for those boards and commissions. We'll continue to do so. Pending any questions, that's all I have.
Questions for Brian? Nope. Okay. Okay, thanks, Brian. Let's go to item 9. And this is a review of the proposed or the draft 2022 county legislative agenda.
So thank you, Commissioners. These are the items that you reviewed with Romero and I believe with our legislative representative, Deborah Mejia. It's just in a pretty format now, but these are the same items that you have reviewed in the past. They are, in a nutshell, to ask the legislature to establish a separate property tax levy for veterans and for mental health and developmental disability needs, to increase state funding to address mental health and substance use disorder treatment, to provide state resources for broadband partnership, to provide funding to accelerate critical work needed on the Nisqually River Bridge, and to fully cover the costs of the Blake decision. In our shared legislative issues, The county also is expressing its support for legislative actions addressing climate change and clarification of the new police reform laws. This is in draft form before you today. I'm not sure when the goal is to have it final, but probably not too long from now. So please review this, and if you have any edits, please let us know.
Sir?
Commissioner Mejia has a question.
My question was going to be, if that meant the intent of what you were trying to get to, Commissioner Menser, for, you said you kind of wanted the supporting legislative actions addressing climate change. You said you wanted it a little bit more honed in and more specific.
Yeah, so my update on that is we ran out of, we were going to be addressing, I want to kind of talk with the steering committee. We're going to have at the next meeting our state legislators, as many, well, I think that the intent would be to have Jessica Bateman, Lori Dolan, and Sam Hunt. I'm not sure, we're hoping to get at least two of them to kind of talk through some of this. So I may come, at this point, this is fine. I may come to the board and ask us to kind of amend it if we can kind of come to a better understanding of what specific bills are being supported. So yeah, thank you for addressing that. But I guess more to come on that. I guess this is fine for where we're at right now. I had a question, Robin, on when it says shared legislative issues. Can you clarify who are we sharing? What does that mean, shared? Is it just like with the cities? Is it shared across the jurisdictions of Thurston County, or what is the shared referring to?
That is a great question, and I will get clarification on that.
Okay.
Could it be the state organization?
It could be WASAC, but we know
Shared
that
with
some
WASAC?
of these others are also shared with WASAC, like WASAC is working the Blake decision and on the others. So I'll get clarification on shared with who.
Okay, Commissioner Edwards, do you have any questions on the draft?
No, sir.
Okay, then let's move along to, it sounds like we'll follow up on that. Item 10 is briefing or public hearing decisions pending. We've got two. Number one is the Tumwater Joint Plan update.
Yes, and I am hoping that Josh is available, but I do see Maya here. So I would like to turn it over to Maya.
Good morning, Commissioners. Maya People, Senior Planner with Community Planning. I'll just provide a quick update and then I'll pass it over to Leah Davis to give a little bit more in depth. This is a follow-up from an October 20th briefing that we had with the Board of County Commissioners on the Tumwater Joint Plan. And at that briefing, we went over the public comments that we received, which there were a few public comments at a public hearing and also a few written public comments. We reviewed a few proposed zoning amendments that are part of the Tumwater Joint Plan. And we also reviewed some of the code amendments that go along with the airport hazard overlay. Leah provided the Board of County Commissioners with a few options for the next steps, and pending that direction, we'll be wrapping up the final Tumwater Joint Plan for a final action before the board at the end of the year. So Leah, I'll pass it over to you, and if you have any more information to provide before we take questions from the board.
Good morning, Commissioners. Leah Davis, Community Planning. I don't have anything to add to that summary, but I'm available for questions.
Thank you, ladies.
Okay. Commissioner Edwards, sounds like you had something.
It seems like when we talked about this before, there was the possibility that something was going to go back in front of our planning commission for clarification because it doesn't match completely with Tumwater's, I guess. So did anything take place on that? Has there been any change, change of position from our planning commission?
There hasn't been a change in position, and I don't recall that we were taking anything back to our planning commission. I think there was a question of clarification on why they voted the way they did. But I didn't expect that we were taking anything back to them. Maya, can you speak to that?
Yeah, and just to clarify, we did invite the chair of the Planning Commission to attend the first board briefing on this, and he was not available. So typically when we have a differing Planning Commission recommendation, either differing from a staff recommendation or differing from a city's recommendation, we do invite them to attend the board briefing, but they were not available to attend. However, I will say that Commissioner Nelson, I believe, did attend the board public hearing and provided a little bit of context about why the Planning Commission had a different recommendation from Tumwater. And that section that the Planning Commission, the Thurston County Planning Commission is recommending to strike is not a required component of the Tumwater Joint Plan, but it is kind of an implementation plan for staff moving forward. It lays out what we would need to look at with the code updates in the upcoming years. So it's not a required element, but it is helpful implementing the plan moving forward.
Okay, thank you, Maya.
Mejia, anything?
No, I remember I was just remembering our conversation, and then Commissioner Edwards brought that point up, and yes, I believe the conversation was, was this explained to the planning commissioners, and staff said yes, and then this also aligned with our county strategic plan. So other than that, I don't have much notes on it, so I think all my questions were answered at that work session, so I have no follow-up questions at this time.
Okay, so I guess the board needs to, there's option 1, option 2, and option 3 laid out in our briefing. Are you looking for that decision this morning, correct, Maya?
That's correct. Yes, we are.
Robin? Okay,
Yes.
yeah, so I'm supportive of option 1 myself.
Yeah, me too.
Option 1 as well, yeah.
So we see 3 thumbs up for option 1.
I mean, they aren't listed as 1, 2, 3, they're bullet points.
They are.
Oh,
so
well, you're looking at something different than I am.
I'm looking at the item in
1,
your
2, 3.
packet, and
I'm happy to pull up the slide on the screen as well, if that's helpful for the commissioners.
Yeah, if you could, maybe,
so there you go.
this is
See,
it
there's
here.
1, 2, and 3.
1, 2, and 3.
Yep,
Let's see.
we've got them. Thank you, Maya.
1 is,
So 1 is the staff recommendation as proposed.
is that the one the planning commission recommended, our planning commission?
No, that was
Planning Commission recommended option number 2.
Okay, well, then I was referring to the wrong package, and I want to, just because they heard a lot of input about this, and so I'm gonna go along with the planning commission, and I guess it's planning, our planning commission was option number 2.
Right, so I hear 1 commissioner, Commissioner Menser, is supporting the staff and city's recommendation, that's option 1. 1 commissioner is supporting the planning commission recommendation, that's option 2, and Commissioner Mejia, you are
option 1.
with option 1 with the staff recommendation. Okay.
Thank you, Maya. Thank you, Leah.
Great.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
We're on to Sheriff's Office Administration, Sheriff's Office Administrative Staff.
Chair?
salaries.
Chair?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Josh had his hand up, and I don't know if it was in reference to what we were just discussing or not.
Okay, I didn't see that. Go ahead,
You know
John.
what, sorry, may I jump in real quick?
Sure.
I just wanted to do a quick acknowledgement to the Board of County Commissioners. When you're directing the staff to complete docket items and big docket items like this, the joint plans,
the action you just took is the completion of a really big lift. And so I wanted to say thank you to the Board of County Commissioners for the direction you provided. Thank you to the Planning Commission for all the input that they received. Thank you to staff for getting this all the way across the goal line. Next, we've got the City of Lacey and City of Olympia, but these have been joint plans that have been sitting fallow for a long time. So to get them aligned is going to make it's going to reduce the confusion throughout our communities in the permit and planning process. So just wanted to provide that perspective and provide my appreciation to all the different groups that have put a lot of hard work into this.
Thanks, Josh. Okay, very good. Let's look at, looks like we have some slides. I don't know if we're going through these slides or if these are for background on the Sheriff's Office Administrative Staff Salary Study.
Yes,
Go ahead, Robin.
Commissioner. These are the slides that you reviewed on October 19th when our human resource staff did a presentation on the findings of the classification and compensation study. And you've had a few conversations about this item, and just the item on your agenda earlier today and what you discussed during the budget deliberations were to change the classifications for all 5 classes, the job descriptions, if you will, and then reset the salary range for 3 of the 5 at this time and continue discussion on the other 2. So the item from this morning is now on hold, pending your conversation now. And Debbie is here to answer any questions you have. I would reiterate something that I think I heard Romero say, which is we have a process before us, and the upcoming broad compensation study will be another opportunity to address these and get solid comparables for the 2 classes that we were not able to assess at this time. So with that, I'm just going to open it up and ask what your pleasure is.
Go ahead. I figured you want to start. I always jump in there. I'm sorry.
No problem. Commissioner Mejia, go ahead.
So my question is, I guess to Debbie. My question's in regards to the 2 positions, right? The ones that we're discussing, which is the legal assistant and the borough staff assistant. And I mean, it was previously discussed that the legal assistant was comparable to a paralegal 1 in the county, and the borough staff assistant was going to be comparable to the legal assistant supervisor. So I'm kind of wondering what happened there.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Debbie Brookman, HR. I'll try to explain. So I'm the county's labor relations negotiator, as you're probably all aware. I have done some classification work in the past and some wage study work in the past, all in the context of negotiating collective bargaining agreements, generally speaking. When we entered into the agreement to do the wage study, we had additional classification resources in human resources that we didn't actually have available to us when we got into the details of this market study and realized that it was going to be more complicated than we thought. Some ideas were brought forward, including potentially benchmarking the bureau staff assistant to the legal assistant supervisor. Including potentially benchmarking the legal assistants to the legal assistant supervisor. And I have to admit, I was excited about those ideas. I thought they solved a problem that we were, obviously running into in the absence of any ability to find reasonable comparables in the other jurisdictions. But in the end, when we, finally gathered all the analysis together, had our conversations, took it back to the HR director, there just wasn't enough evidence ultimately to support those approaches to those two classifications in this wage study. So we had to, and I think this is where the association probably, and they can certainly speak for themselves on this, but I think that's where a lot of the angst came, because we really worked hard to try to be as collaborative as possible. But when those ideas didn't pan out in the way that people had hoped, I think that was very disappointing. And I understand that, and I respect that perspective, that feeling, that emotion around all of that. But there's just simply was not enough evidence to benchmark the Bureau staff assistant to the legal assistant supervisor job classification. Those classifications are not related in the way that would support benchmarking in the way that we initially discussed it. And for the legal assistants, arguably benchmarking to the legal assistant supervisor would make more sense there. The problem we really run into with that approach is that the available evidence that we do have, the 4 matches that we provided in the packet for their part of the wage study, did not support a wage increase. And so the idea and concept of benchmarking, maybe you can make it work because those classifications are related, but only in the absence of evidence that would show a contrary result. So in the end, the recommendation from HR is to have the legal assistants and the Bureau staff assistant classifications reviewed by the consultant, who presumably will have more expertise and maybe more tools for how to appropriately assess whether or not we're paying a fair wage for both of those classifications. On the legal assistant side also, and this is specific to the legal assistants only, not to the Bureau staff assistant, but for the legal assistants, part of the problem is structural. And it's not that there's anything wrong with the way the sheriff's office has their legal assistants structured. It's just that it's so different from the way a lot of the other jurisdictions are structured that it makes an apples to apples comparison difficult. There are other approaches to compensation that we can take to address some of those, I'll call them inequities. And we'll be discussing those. I assume we will be discussing those with the association when their contract opens next year. Things like lead assignment pay, special assignment pay for specific bodies of work, such as public disclosure. There's other more appropriate means to. I'm sorry, for some reason my dog is deciding to crawl around under my desk today. Other more appropriate means to achieve those ends that haven't been discussed or negotiated yet.
Can I ask a follow-up question, please?
Of course.
Debbie, my question's in regards to, we just went through the budget process, and the prosecutor has their legal assistants doing public records because, we had a big discussion about that. I remember that was one of the items we had a big discussion about that. So it's not completely rare. What part was it that it didn't really fit?
Oh, in reference to using the paralegal one in the prosecuting attorney's office as an internal comparison for the legal assistants in the sheriff's office. The paralegal, and I don't have it up here in front of me, but as I recall, the paralegal requires a higher level of certification and education. And there are also components to the paralegal's job description. The general intent of the job is significantly different, but there are also certain components in the paralegal's job description which are significantly more impactful than what's described in the legal assistant's job classification. Things like conducting public presentations and, some negotiation. This is just off the top of my head. I'd have to go back and look at the detailed analysis. But in the end, it was not a good comparison internally for us.
Mr. Edwards.
Yes, sir. I guess a couple different things. I just want to point out that these folks that we are referring to can go right up the road here to Amazon and make more money. They don't have to have any skills or any particular responsibilities. And the folks that we're talking about, I think there's 16 in this group of two individual groups, which is the vast majority of this group we're talking about. I don't know their complete job description, but I'll just use weapons permits as an example. That's a pretty, you better be on the ball if you're going to start issuing weapons permits. And these folks make those permits possible. And sure, some supervisor probably signs off on it or something, but without doing the real background on it. So, I mean, we're asking a lot of these folks. And under the Thurston County Compensation and Methodology and Procedures, I'll just refer to page 5 and 6, where it talks about benchmarking. And on the second paragraph on 6, I think it is, every effort will be made to benchmark a classification to the labor market. However, on occasion, HR is unable to benchmark a classification because the need for an office or department to have a unique classification. If HR is unable to obtain solid market data, then internal comparisons will be used to make salary recommendations. And I don't want to pretend that this is me making this recommendation and trying to make it look like it would be easy for our HR staff. I'm not at all saying that. My concern is retention and simple loss to say to a business like Amazon. And so I just don't want to start off while we move forward with others and leave these folks hanging when it looks pretty apparent to me that a raise is definitely justified. Now, I know we're worried about setting precedents and other things, but I can't in good conscience just leave them behind. So, I mean, I'd be open to compromise or something on it, but I think we ought to move ahead at least, I don't know what we're giving the others, and we have to go in 5% increments, it sounds like. So I'm gonna just say, why not give them the 10%, faced with what's coming down the pike in future negotiations. So we're not starting off in the hole. So I'm in favor of including these in our vote today. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Commissioner Mejia?
No, I'm, you know, with the mindset that there is going to be a classification study done, and you know, the results that come back from that, it might be at that same level, it might be less, it might be more. You know, for me, you know, just those initial comparisons, I feel like, you know, I'd be willing to support that.
I didn't catch that. You're supporting Commissioner Edwards' proposal?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know where that leaves us, Robin. I'm not supporting that. I think that we have a process set up. This board is invested in a comprehensive class and comp study and process, and I push that every step of the way. I've talked to some other departments and learned that this is not an unprecedented situation. This has happened in public works just fairly recently, where there just wasn't, some groups advanced forward and others weren't able to because of lack of available comps. So I don't think we should be doing this hodgepodge willy-nilly and not, and you know, it's the sheriff's office now, but we're going comprehensively across the county. I think we have to trust our process. And I do support the action on the agenda today, because where we have known data, I want to make those moves, and we'll make the appropriate moves in every situation, hopefully, down the line. But I don't want to be guessing on something like this. So I don't know where that puts this decision point, Robin.
So, well, I hesitate to add things at this time, but you just brought up Public Works. We had a very recent review of both Public Works and Central Services staff where some of the classifications we could do the comps, so we knew what they were, and others we did not have comps. And so we moved forward in exactly the fashion that we're proposing to you today for those two departments. And we are having retention and recruitment issues in both Public Works and in Central Services. So I will just make the comment that to give an arbitrary increase with no data whatsoever opens the door to every other classification where you're having issues in the county, where we have a process set up and a policy in place but it's the prerogative of the board, and if you direct us to give an increase to these two classes with no basis whatsoever, we will do so.
Chair?
Yes, sir.
Am I hearing from you a move for a compromise on that? Or you're just flat no? I mean, we have to do 5% increments, so I'm trying to stay in line with that.
So you're saying you would be amenable to 5% for each of those two classes rather than 10?
Well, I would if we had the assurance that there was going to be continuation on the bargaining determination of what would be appropriate. That's all. I'm just trying to make it all fit in a fair and equitable manner and not lose employees to drive 10 miles north or less. So that's kind of where I'm at.
So can I bring forward the Public Works and the Central Services positions for the same action?
Nobody can stop you.
I guess you could, but I don't think we're prepared to make a decision at this point in time.
To make a decision on these?
Well, we've been kicking this one around for several weeks now, and I think that's the difference. So, no, I'm not prepared to move ahead on everything, but I do want to get something solved, and I don't want to leave folks behind when their peers are not being left behind. And
Sounds like we've already done that.
I don't want to lose employees.
Yes, you have already done that.
We've already done that. It just wasn't the sheriff's office. And I would not be comfortable with a compromise until I know kind of what the parameters of what Robin's describing are. So I kind of know the scope of what we're not doing, what we would be proposing to do for this office and that we did not do. So sitting here today, I might be amenable to compromise in the future, but I'm not today, especially in light of that new information that we actually did. And I do remember now that you say that, Robin, I do remember the Central Services piece of it. It's just, the recommendation was to follow the process, and we did. And now the proposal is not to do that.
Well,
I'm not really sure why.
Let me just point out that we didn't necessarily follow our own guidelines, and that's what concerns me. That we did have the option, as I stated in paragraph 2 on page 6, to make a determination so that we didn't end up in this situation. Why that did or did not happen, I'm not finding any fault. It didn't happen, even though it sounds like it could have happened. So I don't want to be too disruptive, but I want to treat people fairly. I think we've got some serious negotiation coming up throughout the county, but I won't go into any in-depth on that.
Commissioner Mejia, it sounds like it's in your lap. I'm prepared to move forward with what's on the agenda, nothing more today. I'm prepared to discuss it in the future further. Commissioner Edwards sounds like he'd like to add a 10% bump for the two that aren't included in the proposed motion today. Where are you at?
I'm leaning with Commissioner Edwards on this. You know, and to Robin's point, I'm sorry, I do not remember, and, you know, I don't know what happened with Public Works and Central Services. I always try to treat everyone the same, whether it be, you know, an elected office or a non-elected office. But, you know, this classification study, I know it's way overdue. But just with kind of the initial recommendations that were given first to staff, and, you know, I'm kind of just leaning towards that. But, you know, I would like to know with Public Works and Central Services what happened with that, because I feel like if we're going to do this action, then I think we do need to treat everyone fairly on it.
So the directors of those two departments received the HR recommendation and were willing to go with the recommendation and follow the process. We're following the process. That's what happened to those. These are outside of the process. And as the county manager and as assistant county manager, I am recommending to the board, along with our HR director, that you follow the county process. But again, it's up to you if you'd like to do something different.
I might point out that, are we stepping outside of that normal process anyway with these other three positions? Is that right?
You are not following a separate process. We had appropriate comparables for these other three classifications. And we are recommending that you move one range for the financial operations assistants and two ranges for both the crime analyst and the legal assistant supervisor based on appropriate comps in other jurisdictions that will move them to within 5% of the median of the range. And what the data that you do not have for the bureau staff assistant or the legal assistant is comparables where you can establish a median salary and whether or not you are moving these classifications to within 5% of that salary.
Okay, well, I don't want to lose anybody. I'll just use Amazon as the example. That's where I'm at. Right now, we stand to have continuing losses, and retention is a big deal. So I'm sticking with it.
I would just like to, Robin, if the board chooses to add those two, I would like, my request is that we remove the proposed item from the consent agenda, obviously, and that we have a separate item so that I can vote affirmatively on the proposal for the classifications and the three pay ranges. And then we have a separate item that would, outside of the comparable process, that the board would be bumping up to whatever it is, two ranges for those two additional positions as a separate item, and then the board could then vote in a logical manner. Otherwise, it's all jumbled up, and the different commissioners, me in particular, would not be able to express my vote accurately.
We can certainly move it off consent, and I can work with HR to create a separate action for the additional two classifications. I don't know that we can have that ready for this afternoon, but we'll do our best. Because I do think that we know what, depending on the board's direction, one range or two ranges. One range is 5%, two would be 10%. So
the proposal, I believe, is two ranges for each of the two, correct, Commissioner Redwards?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and Commissioner Mejia concurs with that, is what I heard?
Yes.
So that's what it should just eventually say, salary adjustment recommendation, or it shouldn't say recommendation because there isn't a recommendation. It should say salary adjustment of two ranges for those two specified classes.
Right. So Debbie, could you go in and set that AIS up so that we have that for this afternoon?
I think it's
Yes.
separate next
Thank
week.
you.
I mean, does it,
I mean, well, this has been hanging fire a long time. I mean, I want to do it right now, but that's.
Today or
up to
next
the
week,
board.
it
Yeah.
makes no difference.
Right.
If Debbie can get it in, then we're good to go.
The intent is to get it in, and if it doesn't, then it'll be on there next week for sure, but that sounds like we're directing staff to try to put it in today.
Okay, we will do that.
Two separate items outside of consent.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, then let's go to item 11.1, HCP update. Josh Cummings, I imagine, is our lead here. You there, Josh? All right. You're up.
Robin, did you want to have me set up?
Yeah, go ahead, Josh.
Great. So this is the CPED ongoing check-in with the commissioners on the habitat conservation plan and incidental take permit process, wherein the county is applying to the federal government to receive a permit for covered species within our area so that then we, the county, can turn around and issue building permits to our local residents who would like to use the land appropriately for their building needs. So we've committed to coming back and checking in with you at intervals on 3 main topics related to the HCP ITP process. The first one is, how is the permitting process with the federal government going? And that Christina will address. The second is, how is the internal code and ordinance writing so we can implement the process when we receive the ITP? Still targeting likely the first or second quarter of 2022 to receive that from the federal government. And then the third big portion of this process is the land acquisition. We need land for mitigation to fulfill the commitments in the HCP. And as we've talked about in the past, we're working to do all of these things at the same time. Instead of waiting and then doing them consecutively, we're doing all 3 big items in a push so that when we, if and when, likely, we receive the ITP, we'll be ready to hit the ground running for our residents. So that's the overview, and then I'll hand it over to Chris for the more specific update and then questions to the board. Go for it, Chris.
Great. Thank you, Josh. Chris Chapeau, Interim Planning Manager and lead for the Habitat Conservation Plan. So we started this process in 2020 with the 4th draft of the HCP being submitted to U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and we've come a long ways. We have drafted a environmental impact statement, and we have published that draft environmental impact statement that was done September 24th. We are currently in the 45-day comment period for the DEIS, and that comment period does end November 8th, which is next Tuesday. We do believe we're on track with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for a decision in, as Josh said, in early Q1 for the incidental take permit. We are currently working with them to address any areas where there's additional clarification. I and our legal counsel are helping to draft language that better clarifies pieces within the habitat conservation plan. So we're moving forward with the incidental take permit process. And as Josh mentioned, we are also working with willing sellers. We need to have mitigation in place so that we can hit the ground running when U.S. Fish and Wildlife issues our incidental take permit. I'm being a little pre-decisional, but I guess I can do that. I'm not the regulatory agency there. We are moving forward with a 2-year plan for land acquisition for that mitigation. Thanks to the director's great direction on that. And this will allow us to have that mitigation in place when we have the incidental take permit and the implementing ordinance. It also allows us to steadily grow our mitigation or conservation lands. We don't have to buy everything all up at once, but we can do it as we grow and with the necessary permits in the specific areas that our county is growing in. And it is my understanding that the director did provide the county manager with land acquisition and surface area maps that sure he will provide to the board. The other thing that's happening with that mitigation is the board's work and the budget. And I want to thank the board for prioritizing conservation services funding and establishing the mitigation fund in the preliminary budget. Having the support is very important to the overall success of our project. At the same time, all of this, we are also working on the implementing ordinance, some new technology, the guidance on how to actually maneuver the HCP, in training for the both internal staff and for our constituents. There are a lot of moving pieces, but we are encouraged by our partnership formed with the service and some great public participation over the last few weeks with the comment period. I will stop there and ask if there's any questions.
Well, let me jump in real quick because there's 3 big points there that you said near the end that I want to make sure the board hears. So thank you again for the actions that you're in the process of taking with the budget on conservation futures. That's going to directly impact how quickly and efficiently we can acquire the land for mitigation. The second is there will be an action coming to you on the codes and ordinances as we have in the process of writing them. They will come to you for your action to approve them and codify them so that we can then implement them when we have the ITP. So we've talked about this potential action coming to you. Chris, what do you think, early next year?
Yes, early next year.
And then, the third one. Chris mentioned the email that I sent to the county manager. The service areas for the subspecies are public information. And many commissioners have been out in conversation with local landowners and some of the topics that you may, address when you're talking to your constituents. If there is land in the appropriate service areas, thank you for bringing those to our attention, as has been done in the past. And that map that the county manager has will help you in that target tracking process, so that you'll know, we don't want to put too many eggs in one basket in one service area. So as Chris mentioned, we're trying to spread that out, and you have that information. If you don't, let me know and I'll get it to you.
Can I get a copy of that map, please?
Yes, certainly.
Thank you.
And then the last thing I would add is there's a lot of, the ongoing question is how much is it going to cost? How much is it going to cost the applicant when they come in? And so that we continue to say the cost is really driven by the amount of land that the applicant decides to impact. And so you come into our front counter at the Building Development Center, the BDC, and we'll work with you first to try and avoid impacted habitat. If you cannot avoid, if you want to put your building in the habitat, we'll work with you to mitigate, to reduce the footprint if possible. So the smaller area you impact, the less your cost will be. And then depending upon what you decide on from that point, we have a calculator, a formula set up currently on our website, where you can look at the amount of land you're impacting, the type of soil, whether it's more or less preferred, and input all of that data into the spreadsheet there, or the formula that we have on the link available publicly, and that'll give you your cost. So we have a lot of information available to the public, and we've appreciated the input thus far, and this is just an update. Thank you for your support.
I have a question, sir.
Yep.
Josh, would you bring me a copy of that map that you're going to take to Commissioner Mejia too, please?
Certainly.
And then my question is, are we past the inspection period for gophers now? Is that over and now we have to wait until next year? Or?
Well, so thank you, Commissioner. What you're referring to, I believe, is the interim gopher review process. Yeah. And the interim review process is in lieu of having an HCP. So the whole goal of getting this habitat conservation plan passed with an ITP, the incidental take permit, is to not have to do the interim gopher review process individually for each applicant. So yes, this year's interim review process closed on December 31st for on-site reviews. We're working through the reviews.
On which, September 31st?
October 31st?
October 31st.
Okay, so it's closed now.
So the review,
so
the
they can't have new inspections started now because they need to be 30 days apart or something anyway, right? So
That's correct.
what I'm wondering about, are we still utilizing those inspections that were done earlier and using the interim plan? So there's still those folks that are able to continue to move ahead until we get this tape business authorized through the federal government. Is that right?
That's right.
And when are you actually thinking that we might have that in place for those individuals that are wanting to do something next year, for an example? I mean, if we didn't have it in place, they can't even begin the process, I don't think, until June or May as far as their first inspection, and then they have to wait another inspection. So is this going to be in place prior to that?
Commissioner, that's exactly why we're trying to do all these three big things at the same time, so that we're prepared when we, the county, receive the permit from the federal government. And so the goal is, yes, to be prepared to have that in place before the next interim review process season starts in June, but we're at the mercy of the federal government.
Okay, thank you.
We're hoping to never see an interim gopher process again in the history of Thurston County.
Thank you.
That's my hope.
That would be amazing.
Okay, is that the update, guys?
That's the update.
It all sounded really positive. So is there anything we need to be worried about on the horizon? Any dark clouds on the horizon for?
Well, I'd say it is positive, but it's difficult. The lift on this that the staff behind the scenes is doing is a lot. And so writing codes and ordinances this fast, getting them prepared for your review, working with the federal government, buying land, making sure that it's the right habitat, all of this is really complicated and technical stuff. So just wanted to make sure that, yes, it's positive, but there's a lot going into it and there's a lot of moving parts. So we will give you a heads up if a dark cloud starts to form on the horizon for sure.
Perfect. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Josh.
Thank you.
It's 11:40. I think we're basically on track. Let's go to Nisqually River flooding informational. Kurt Harden.
Good morning, Commissioners. Kurt Harden, Director of Emergency Services. I'm here to talk with you about what happens when the dark clouds actually show up over Thurston County. I'm here to talk about the La Grande Dam and the Nisqually River and what's been taking place over the last several years regarding communication back and forth with Tacoma Power. So first of all, I want to do a little bit of lead in. Tacoma Power operates La Grande Dam on the Nisqually River. This is a hydroelectric facility and it's for power generation and not licensed for flood control. But Tacoma Power is required by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, which is also known as FERC, to develop an emergency action plan for the Nisqually hydroelectric project. Tacoma Power reviews the plan and the EAP and makes updates as necessary and notifies plan holders of any changes or revisions. During an emergency, notification will be initiated and the plan will be used to help reduce the impact of emergencies associated with the dam and or its facilities. In the event of an emergency, Tacoma Power notifies Thurston County Emergency Management as instructed in the Emergency Action Plan so that our agency can move forward with actions such as notifications to residents via Thurston Community Alert, social media, and the county website. And then in the same, and we try to do that, or we do that in the quickest manner possible. The last Emergency Action Plan update was received in August of 2021. I also want to say that the pool level is currently at 1,185 feet, but it can vary from 1,114 feet to 1,207 feet, and the 1,207 foot elevation is the maximum amount for the pool. The current discharge rate is 1,170 cubic feet per second. And I'm bringing that up because I want to talk about what happens in a series of situations when we get notified of increased discharge rate from the dam. Thurston County Emergency Management monitors the dam discharge rate on a daily basis and also the Nisqually flow rate. Notification trigger points are when Tacoma Power increases the release from the dam to 5,000 cubic feet per second, and then whenever that is changed. And so what happens then is Thurston County Emergency Management starts notifying residents when the discharge rate reaches 6,000 cubic feet per second, and we do continuous notifications as that rating, if that rate increases. What's considered minor or nuisance flooding occurs when the discharge rate reaches 8,000 cubic feet per second, or there's a gauge height of about 8.75 feet. Although no residential structures are threatened at this flow rate, farms and ranches upstream can experience enhanced bank erosion, which can also threaten livestock. Moderate flooding occurs when the flow rate exceeds 15,000 cubic feet per second, or a gauge height of about 10 feet at McKenna. At this flow rate, the river reaches full bank and begins to overflow in the delta, and any increased flows could cause structural flooding. If there's a high tide in conjunction with moderate flooding, there's a possibility of flooding taking place at the Heiko Lane, 6th Avenue, Riverbend Campground and RV Park, and at the Riverside Manor Apartments. Major flooding occurs when the flow rate exceeds 16,500 cubic feet per second, or a gauge height of about 10.5 feet at McKenna. In this situation, in the Delta, Frank's Landing begins to flood and water comes close to flowing through Durgan Tunnel. And then at 20,000 cubic feet per second, or the gauge reads 12 feet, the river reaches full bank or overflows, and at McKenna and the Squally Pines, the Delta may see major flooding conditions with water flowing through the tunnel and homes threatened along the Riverside Drive, Conine Street, and Conine Avenue. And then once we reach 25,000 cubic feet per second, the houses in the Squally Pines are flooded, McKenna is flooded, and flooding is becoming near catastrophic in the Delta. And then somewhere above 30,000 cubic feet per second, flooding in the Delta extends from wall to wall. So I just wanted to give you the background there, and those were the trigger points we utilize in emergency management. Also, emergency management staff has met with Tacoma Power most recently in January of 2021 to work with Tacoma Power on their decision-making process and how that relates to keeping the reservoir water level and their notification processes. Tacoma Power emergency management staff also work with us in our local emergency planning committee, which meets quarterly. And also Tacoma emergency management staff is very responsive. They work with us on our questions and our concerns when the rivers start rising and the increase from the dam starts taking place. We also found out that Washington State Department of Transportation is currently doing a planning and environmental linkage study that includes the Nisqually Delta. Part of the issues that have been described and previously are being looked at in this study. And they're looking at the long-term effects, such as a bend in the river just upstream of I-5 that may continue to erode to the freeway embankment. So the current prediction is between 17 and 30 years, and I realize that's a wide range, but for that erosion to occur. This study is going to assess that, and it's also in its final stages. We anticipate the study by WashDOT being released early next year, and we will see the results once it's been released. Also, the USGS has done a study on the river as well. The final report for their study has not been released, but there was a presentation that was given to the Nisqually River Council in January 2021 by one of their hydrologists. And that information in there is also included in the WashDOT study as our information as well. And that presentation, though, showed in January 2021, showed the expanded potential flooding due to climate change. It also showed the location of the bridges as part of the Nisqually Delta and the potential for future impacts to I-5 and also McKenna. So right now, what we're waiting on is the WashDOT study to be released early next year and to take a look at those results. But in the meantime, we're continuously monitoring what's taking place on the Nisqually River on a daily basis. And again, ready to notify residents if there's an increase in water discharge rate and or the river starts to rise.
Are you taking questions? Is that why you stopped, Kurt?
That's why I saw, yes, sir. That's why I stopped. Also to take a breath.
Yeah, okay. Chair, I have a question or two.
Go ahead, Commissioner Edwards.
The flooding that took place, I think 96 was a bad one.
Yes, sir.
A couple since we've reached 2000. I think 17 was another bad one, but there might have been a couple in between there, 7 or 8 or somewhere in there. Do you know what 96 was as far as the cubic feet per second?
Mm-hmm.
On 96, what was that?
February 1996 was a historic event because it was the flood of record for the Nisqually River. It was estimated to be 50,000 cubic feet per second flowing through the river. And I will tell you that the gauge at McKenna broke at 13 feet elevation. And so we know it went higher than that. Just don't know how much higher because it actually broke. So 1996, February 96 was the flood of record.
Okay, how about 17? That just did a lot of damage locally to folks. What was it in 2017?
Yeah, I don't have that information in front of me. I can get you that,
that
information.
Okay, that's fine. No, do you know when WashDOT is planning to have their report released?
I've been told early next year.
And could you at least send me the information of the group that might be doing that study?
I can send that to all the county commissioners, yes, sir.
Okay. I guess other than that, that time frame you gave of, I don't know, 17 to 50 years or something on washing out the footing on I-5, which apparently they're looking at, right? WashDOT is studying that. And are they basing that on the potential of another couple, because of maybe global warming, another couple of 1996 type floods happening? Or is that based on we're not going to have anything more than 30,000 feet ever again, nor are we going to have high tides that coincide at those times? I'm just trying to figure out where they might be putting their emphasis.
No, understand, and I don't have that information. I'll see if we can get that, but I don't have that information at this point in time.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Good report.
Commissioner Mejia?
No, sir.
Kurt, you're going fast. Can you explain to me what this WashDOT report that you're talking about, what is it they're studying?
They're doing a hydrological study of the Nisqually Delta. And that's not the only area of emphasis for the study, but that's included in this study. And they're looking at it as from a transportation perspective as to the impact on the bridges for Interstate 5. And they're looking at a long range outlook for the Nisqually River as one of those impacts.
Got it. Okay, thank you, Kurt.
Okay, thank you.
Let's go to item 11.3, which is Chandler Court lease space discussion/decision. It's Assistant County Manager.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. This item is mainly for your information, although if you're prepared to give guidance, I would love to have it. The Chandler Court lease is scheduled to run through October of next year. However, as you saw in many of your budget items, the partners that we work with on the court backlog are concerned about not having that space in the future. And we are also looking for additional space for the expanding number of FTEs. Even though they're temporary, we're looking for temporary space so that we can house the additional prosecutor and public defense FTEs that we're going to hire to address both the backlog and blank. So what I am proposing is that we go ahead and extend the lease on Chandler Court and get additional space to house our new staff, our temporary staff, at least through the end of 2025. And I'd like to go ahead and do that now, secure the space at a reasonable rate. We would pay for Chandler Court with recovery money, COVID recovery money, until the backlog is resolved. And at that time, even after we resolve the backlog, we're going to need swing space for the courts as we work on renovating the buildings that we're currently in. So if we need it for longer than we have the backlog at the courts due to COVID, we would use the money that we're using for the project to continue to pay the rent. So I would like the board's approval to move to extend the lease through the end of 2025 and to secure additional space for our temporary staff.
Commissioner Mejia?
I have a lot of questions about that.
Please.
So technically, we're going to be moving this administrative in April, right? And then after that, they're going to come in and kind of.
It's going to be June.
June?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's going to be in June. And then they're going to come in and kind of redesign these buildings so the prosecutor, the clerk, and other. So there can be a shift.
That will take years. That won't happen quickly. That will take years. That's going to take anywhere from 2 to 4 years to renovate the buildings. We've hired the consultant to help us design the plan for how that will work, but we'll start with the buildings that are vacated first, building 1 and 4, move people, once these buildings are ready, move people into these buildings, then do the next building and the next building. We'll do as many concurrently as possible, but we can't do them all at once without disrupting the business that's happening in the buildings that are still occupied. It's going to have a bit of a domino effect. And we know we're going to need the space at Chandler Court for the courtrooms for at least the next 2 to 3 years.
Is that Commissioner Mejia? Do you have more?
No, sir.
Commissioner Edwards?
Have we done all the, I don't know, modifications or whatever we're doing over there at Chandler Court? How much money have we spent over there for that type of activity?
Oh, that's a really good question. We did the modifications in the building, and I would have to look up how much we spent. We spent a substantial amount of CARES Act money to do the modifications in that building.
I guess I'm going to follow up on Commissioner Mejia. I also have quite a few questions. It's not that I think we're going to have to do something, but I'm not so inclined to make a decision on something like this or how this might affect county government in general without having more than a few minutes of discussion on it. I mean, if you're asking for right now,
I don't need a decision right now.
Okay, so we're going to have more discussions on this issue.
I will be bringing this back. Yep. And we've got a little time. The Chandler Court lease runs till next year, but I need to be looking for additional space now for the temporary FTEs we're hiring for the backlog and the Blake decision.
Have you come up with a square footage need or anything for that?
That's part of what we're working on with the group. They're developing a plan. Romero held the first backlog group meeting. They're developing a plan that should be ready in about 2 weeks to tell us how many FTEs we need to house. At that time, I have a project person ready to work with the prosecutor's office and public defense and any of the rest of the partners that need space. We know they need space.
So in regards to that, I mean, public defense, I think they've always been very clear that they need additional space. But, you know, kind of one of my concerns in adopting the 2 million was, where are we going to put all these people? And that was the conversation me and Patrick had afterwards, and he was on the same page as I was. But when I had this conversation with the prosecutor on, you know, why I went the way I did, his comment to me was like, well, we have that figured out. So, you know, like, so just hearing this is news to me, because I was like, oh, okay, I guess, you know, he's fine. So now hearing that he is lacking space, it's
again, we have a project manager at the ready, once we know how many FTEs we're gonna hire, to determine exactly what the space needs are. And we've seen proposals for more space. We know we need space for public defense. I have also heard the prosecutor say he may be able to manage it through telecommuting. But we haven't determined exactly how much space we need, but we know we're gonna need space, and we know we need those courtrooms. We need the courtrooms. And even at Chandler Court, what we've been told is that the space that was provided for the prosecutor and public defense, I've heard from both Patrick and the prosecutor that shared space is inappropriate, and I need additional space at Chandler Court to be able to separate them. Chandler Court or nearby.
One thing I want to address on Chandler Court is that there's at least 2 major courtrooms over there, and I know that they're kind of nominally like district court and superior court, but I think that distinction has to break down when we're dealing with overflow space. And my understanding is it's really not broken down, and superior court has a lot more trial need than district court. And I want to make sure that superior court has access to, so that we can keep those courtrooms trying cases. If that means that superior court's filling both of them because district court doesn't have a trial, that needs to be the policy. And so I'm just kind of hearing about this in the last 24 hours. I don't know if my seatmates have heard about this, but and I know typically, I've said this the whole time I've been a commissioner and as a lawyer in this community, I've always just been kind of amazed at the incredible silo between district and superior court. I've never quite understood it or agreed with it, but this is a situation where I just can't have it. I mean, maybe that's how they work in a lot of other contexts and it's okay, but this is the board providing additional court space, and we didn't lease Chandler Court just to support one or the other. It's for our court system kind of in the entirety. So whatever conversations need to happen or policies need to be developed, we need to make sure we're maximizing the use, especially when you're coming here talking to us about more space for more courtrooms and more lawyers. We have to make sure we're maximizing the space that we've already spent money on.
I agree.
So I've heard quite differently. I've heard that they've been able to kind of switch around courtrooms. I mean, pretty much able, and that they've had good communication on kind of what their needs are. And I know that what sometimes happens is they might not be in trial the whole week, but they have hearings that require that courtroom. And so sometimes they can't just clear their calendar because there's a trial going on, just because district court has also pending cases as well.
Chair?
Yep.
I guess I would just like to say, as we move forward, I think all options ought to be on the table. And one of those options could be night court. I mean, we know that we're in tough times right now. And if that's a necessity for a temporary night court to fill a void until we get something else accomplished, I don't think that's out of the realm of reality. And I think that should always be considered. We have to think about the taxpayers that are paying the bill. So that's and I'm kind of with you on that consolidated effort, that we really need to pay attention to that. So, thank you.
So it's like more to come then, Robin?
Yep, I will bring this back with more details.
Okay, we're at 12:02, and if there's no public testimony follow-up, it seems like we're out of time for commissioners' items unless somebody wants to twist my arm with a burning time-sensitive issue that has to be addressed.
I think we'll have a lot of that going on this afternoon. We don't.
Okay. All right, very good, guys. We got through a lot. We'll be adjourned, and we'll be back at 2 p.m.
Thank you.
Thank you.